Usually when we think of military power, we picture, fighter jets breaking the sound barrier, right? Or armored columns moving across a desert.
Right. Or like special operators doing some midnight raid.
Exactly. We rarely picture uh, purchase orders or supply chain
So
audits.
bureaucratic strategy meetings aren't exactly action movie material.
No, they're not. But, well, right now, the Canadian military is undergoing this massive $81.8 billion overhaul, and they've realized a terrifying truth.
Which is that if you don't own the factory that makes the gunpowder,
Right.
or if you don't control the intellectual property for the software running your rifles, your entire military can basically be shut down by, well, a delayed shipping container.
That is insane to think about, but that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. So welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. Our mission is to really explore this massive generational shift in how a G7 nation arms itself.
Yeah, we're going from the macro-level geopolitical strategy all the way down to the micro-level mechanics of the actual hardware that soldiers are carrying into the field.
Right. And to do this, we've pulled together a pretty dense stack of sources for you. We've got the official Government of Canada Defense Industrial Strategy documents.
We also have some legal and industrial policy analyses from Castles.
Yeah, plus procurement data from outlets like Canadian Army Today and the Armorer's Bench.
And we didn't stop there. We've got corporate press releases, technical specs from Colt Canada, and General Dynamics.
And my favorite part, we're dissecting raw, unfiltered public reactions from a dedicated Reddit thread.
Oh yeah, the Reddit thread is fascinating.
It really is. It's just defense enthusiasts and engineers forensically analyzing leaked video footage of these new systems.
Because, I mean, we are talking about replacing a 35-year-old rifle platform with networked weapon systems running Android.
Which is wild.
And completely bizarre 3D printed suppressors that kind of challenge the laws of fluid dynamics, plus, a fundamental rewiring of an entire national economy.
So usually military procurement is a dry topic. It's, full of bureaucratic red tape. But today, okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you are the person tasked with entirely rebuilding an army from the supply chain up.
You have to start at the macro level. Because you really cannot understand the physical gear without understanding the economic engine that's designed to build it.
Right.
So the Defense Industrial Strategy, or the DIS, that's the foundational blueprint here.
And it is backed by an $81.8 billion budget for defense spending.
Yeah, with $6.6 billion specifically earmarked to kickstart the DIS over the next decade.
The scale of that investment is just staggering to me, but the government's own projections are, I think, what really stand out.
Absolutely. They're treating this less like a traditional military expenditure and more like, well, an aggressive industrial policy.
Right. The goal isn't just to buy weapons. They want to generate $180 billion in procurement investment and create up to 125,000 new jobs by 2035.
They are essentially weaponizing defense spending to force domestic economic growth. And they have to.
Why exactly? I mean, what triggered this specific approach right now?
Well, the war in Ukraine and the cascading supply chain failures we all saw during the pandemic, they completely shattered the illusion of just-in-time defense manufacturing.
Oh, right, because we realized we couldn't just get things shipped overnight anymore.
Exactly. We are looking at a landscape where the old assumption that globalization meant you could simply buy the best gear from whoever sold it cheapest, that has proven to be a fatal vulnerability.
Right, because if things go wrong globally, you're just cut off.
Exactly. The entire paradigm is shifting from optimizing for cost to optimizing for sovereignty.
Right. And to manage this, they're creating the Defense Investment Agency, the DIA, and they're operating on a new philosophical framework, which they call Build, Partner, Buy.
Yeah, and that's a deliberate reversal of decades of procurement habits. Historically, Canada, like a lot of middle powers, would look to the global market first to find a solution.
But this new mandate forces them to prioritize building sovereign capabilities domestically first.
Right. And if the domestic base lacks the engineering maturity, then they move to partner. That means co-developing with trusted Five Eyes allies.
And way.
Buying off the shelf from a foreign entity is strictly positioned as a last resort now.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little. It's like deciding to cook every meal at home from scratch instead of ordering takeout.
Right.
Sure, it's more sustainable and you control the ingredients, but what if you don't even own a stove yet? I mean, historically, their procurement process has been notoriously convoluted. How does Canada plan to suddenly manufacture highly complex systems domestically?
Well, that's where the specific targets in the strategy come in. They're aiming to award 70% of defense acquisitions directly to Canadian firms.
70%, that's huge.
It is. They project this will boost domestic defense revenues by over 240%.
But standing up heavy manufacturing and complex systems engineering, I mean, that isn't a switch you can just flip.
No, it's not.
Huh.
And if you look at Canada's historical procurement record, like the years of delays replacing the fighter jet fleet or the ongoing saga of the surface combatant ships, the friction isn't just a lack of money.
What is it then?
It's a lack of sustained, predictable demand. You can't expect the domestic firm to invest $500 million in tooling and workforce development if the government might just, cancel the contract in 3 years because of a political shift.
Ah, okay, so the demand signal is exactly what the DIA is trying to stabilize.
Precisely. By centralizing the procurement expertise and heavily weighting that build pillar, they're trying to offer the industry a 20-year horizon of guaranteed capitalization.
And they are attaching concrete serviceability targets to this overhaul, right?
Yes. Raising maritime fleet serviceability to 75%, land fleets to 80%, and aerospace to 85%.
Wow. And the only way to sustain those readiness metrics is if the spare parts, the maintenance depots, and the intellectual property are physically located within your own borders.
Exactly. You need the raw materials and places to test them right at home.
Which brings us to the actual definition of sovereign capabilities within the strategy. Because it's easy to say you want to build everything at home, but the DIS specifically targets certain areas.
Yeah, aerospace, digital systems like AI and quantum, medical countermeasures, and crucially, ammunition and critical minerals.
Let's talk about the ammunition part, because that exposes what seems like a severe vulnerability. The strategy aims to establish domestic nitrocellulose production by 2029.
What's fascinating here is that when you dig into the chemistry and the supply chain of nitrocellulose, you realize how precarious the current situation is.
Remind me, what exactly does nitrocellulose do?
It is the foundational propellant for virtually all modern firearms and artillery. If you want a bullet or an artillery shell to fire, you need nitrocellulose.
And the global supply chain for it is incredibly narrow, isn't it?
It is. The process of nitrating cellulose requires massive amounts of high-purity cellulose. That's often derived from cotton linters or really highly refined wood pulp. And you need industrial quantities of nitric and sulfuric acids.
That sounds dangerous.
Extremely. It is a highly volatile, environmentally hazardous manufacturing process. For decades, Western nations happily outsource this dirty, dangerous chemical processing to overseas markets.
Right, relying on, like, Chinese cotton linters and foreign chemical plants.
Exactly. The DIS recognizes that owning the intellectual property for a rifle is completely meaningless if a foreign adversary can simply embargo the raw chemical precursor required to fire it.
So true sovereignty isn't just owning the rifle, it's controlling the chemicals that make the bullet fire.
Exactly. A domestic nitrocellulose facility isn't just an economic asset. It is a critical strategic deterrent.
And that strategic deterrence extends to the raw metals, too. The strategy outlines a $5 billion strategic response fund specifically to help the steel and aluminum industries pivot to defense manufacturing.
Right, because they are looking at global trade pressures, tariff wars, and the dumping of cheap steel by foreign state-subsidized entities.
Oh, so they're using defense procurement as a shield to keep Canadian heavy industry alive. Because if those foundries close...
The capacity to build armored vehicles or naval hulls disappears permanently.
Right. But let's focus on the partnering aspect of the DIS for a second. 92% of Canada's defense industrial base consists of small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs.
That's right. The innovation, the advanced drone software, the specialized optics, the encrypted communications, it isn't coming from massive legacy prime contractors. It's coming from specialized tech firms with 50 employees.
But how are mom-and-pop tech shops supposed to supply a national army? The defense procurement environment is notoriously hostile to small businesses.
Oh, absolutely. We frequently see what's called the Valley of Death in defense innovation.
For Valley of Death?
Yeah. A small tech firm gets a minor government grant, they develop a brilliant prototype, but they lack the tens of millions of dollars in capital required to scale their manufacturing.
Or secure the brutal facility security clearances.
Right. And weather the 5-year bureaucratic delay before a production contract is actually signed. So they either go bankrupt or they get bought out by a massive American prime contractor and the intellectual property leaves the country.
That's incredibly frustrating, but the DIS includes a $4 billion platform managed by the Business Development Bank of Canada, right? The BDC?
Yes, designed specifically to inject venture capital into these SMEs. It's a targeted effort to bridge that valley of death. By providing state-backed venture capital, they're attempting to scale these mom-and-pop shops into mid-tier suppliers.
So they can anchor domestic supply chains instead of just acting as subcontractors. That makes a lot of sense.
And there's another layer of complexity here when we look at the geographic reality of Canada, particularly the Northern Operational Support Hubs, the NOSH program.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's a $2.67 billion investment spread over 10 to 20 years, right? Focused entirely on the high Arctic.
Yes, because the Arctic is
Oh, interesting. So it's not just a military base, it's community infrastructure.
right. The military needs reliable power and logistics hubs. The northern communities need economic lifelines and supply security. By weaving socioeconomic development into the defense budget, they're attempting to build a symbiotic relationship.
That's a really smart way to handle it. You take all of this macro-level industrial planning, the SME funding, the domestic supply chain mandates, the Arctic ports, and it all culminates in the actual physical gear handed to the soldier.
Exactly. All this high-level policy distills down to the specific weapon system Canada just purchased.
Which perfectly sets up the new rifle. Let's talk about the Canadian Modular Assault Rifle, the CMAR system.
Yes. The CMAR procurement represents the physical manifestation of this new strategy. Canada is finally moving to replace the Colt Canada C7 rifle and the C8 carbine.
And the C7 platform has been in service for over 35 years, right? Since 1984.
Yeah. It's an evolution of the M16A2. And while it's been upgraded over the years, the core operating system and the ergonomics reflect the combat doctrines of the late Cold War.
Right. But the modern battle space has simply outgrown the platform. So the government just awarded Colt Canada a sole source contract worth 307 million Canadian dollars.
Which is about $273 million before taxes.
Right. And that's for up to 65,402 new weapons.
But the deployment strategy for the CMAR is a significant departure from standard procurement doctrine. They aren't just buying one gun. They're moving to a two-tier fleet.
A two-tier fleet. Okay, break that down for us.
They are procuring 16,195 full-spectrum variants, that's the FS, and 49,207 general service, or GS, variants. Phase 1 targets the delivery of 30,000 GS rifles between 2026 and 2029.
Wait, why split the fleet? Isn't standardizing everything the golden rule of military logistics?
It absolutely is. Splitting the fleet introduces massive logistical complexity.
Right, because if you have a single platform, an armorer only needs one set of tools, one bin of spare parts. Introducing two different variants seems to invite supply chain friction. It's kind of like a company buying fleet vehicles.
How do you mean?
Well, you give the delivery drivers heavy-duty trucks, but the regional managers just get reliable sedans. You don't need a sports car for a grocery run.
Exactly. And that logic applies here perfectly. The full-spectrum variants are heavily optimized for frontline infantry engaging in complex urban and open-terrain combat.
So they need the highest end optics, advanced suppressor integration, complex laser aiming modules.
Right. Outfitting every single logistics officer, mechanic, and support personnel with a $10,000 weapon system that they will rarely use in an offensive capacity is just fiscally impossible.
That makes sense. It reminds me of the U.S. Marine Corps adopting the M27 infantry automatic rifle for their primary combat elements while keeping the M4 for non-infantry roles.
Exactly. The Canadian two-tier system mimics that logic. The GS variant provides reliable personal protection, while the FS variant concentrates the massive technological investment where it matters most.
But, the most intense debate we saw surrounding the CMAR isn't actually the rifle itself, it's the ammunition it fires.
Yes, the 5.56 NATO debate.
Right. The sources show a fierce public reaction to the decision to stick with the 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO round. The project director, Captain Pedro Cruz Duarte, stated they are comfortable with the 5.56's punch and precision.
But if you look at the raw feedback from the defense community, particularly in the comment sections, there's a very vocal faction arguing that the 5.56 is fundamentally obsolete.
Yeah, users like Alex Hollantware and Regular Joe were pointing directly to the proliferation of level 5 body armor among adversaries, arguing the 5.56 lacks stopping power past 400 meters.
And they are demanding to know why Canada didn't adopt the U.S. Army's new 6.8 millimeter round.
So, impartially summarizing this debate for the listener, what is the actual trade-off here?
Well, the physics of the 6.8 round developed for the U.S. Next Generation Squad Weapon Program are undeniable. It operates at incredibly high chamber pressures, upwards of 80,000 psi.
Wow.
Yeah, which allows a heavier projectile to travel at velocities that could defeat modern armor plates at distances far exceeding a 5.56 round.
Yeah.
It's a massive leap in terminal ballistics.
But the trade-offs are brutal, right? The 6.8 millimeter round is significantly heavier and larger.
Exactly. A soldier carrying a standard combat load of 5.56 might carry 210 rounds. If you switch to 6.8, the sheer weight and size mean that the soldier is carrying far less ammunition into a firefight.
And in an environment where volume of fire often dictates movement, sacrificing round count is a huge tactical risk.
Plus, there's the recoil impulse. The 6.8 generates significantly more recoil. Under extreme stress, higher recoil degrades follow-up shot placement.
That makes sense. And what about interoperability?
That is paramount. The entire NATO logistical apparatus is built around the 5.56 cartridge. If Canada adopted the 6.8 while deployed in a multinational brigade, they couldn't share magazines or crossload ammunition with British, French, or German troops.
Oh, right. The logistical nightmare of running a proprietary caliber in a coalition environment clearly outweighed the ballistic advantages.
Exactly. But they are pushing the limits of the 5.56 envelope. They are developing the XE77A2 cartridge in partnership with General Dynamics.
And this is a toxic-free round, right?
Right,
Which is a massive shift in occupational health.
It really is. Traditional ammunition uses lead stiffenate in the primer and exposed lead in the base of the projectile. When you fire a rifle, especially indoors or in high-volume training, the heat vaporizes those heavy metals.
And the soldiers breathe in that toxic particulate matter.
Right. Over a 20-year career, the accumulation of lead leads to severe neurological degradation. The XE77A2 eliminates that lead exposure entirely.
That's incredible. Now, moving to the architecture of the rifle itself, the CMAR is based on Colt's modular rail rifle design. It abandons the old mounting rails for Magful's MLOK slots.
Yeah, MLOK essentially uses sleek, negative space cutouts directly in the handguard. It shaves off a massive amount of weight from the front of the rifle.
So if the rifle is basically a blank canvas with MLOK slots, what exactly are they mounting on it? Which transitions us perfectly into the optics and smart technology.
Right. Because a lightweight rifle is useless if the optics package can't perform. The GS variant is going to utilize the Colt Optics 16X Low Power Variable Optic, or LPVO.
But the testing footage of the higher-end variants highlights the SAI Optics SAI-6, a 16 by 24 millimeter first focal plane rifle scope.
And that is a massive upgrade. The retail price for the SAI-6 on the commercial market is around $1,330.
Wow, that's a significant investment per unit. What makes it so special?
Well, it features a rapid aiming feature, a large open X, and a free-floating center cross. It allows the human eye to instantly acquire the reticle during close-quarters combat,
while retaining the fine aiming points necessary for precision at long range. Plus, it has an integrated VSOR rangefinder for accurate distance estimation. But the critical engineering detail is that it's a first focal plane, or FFP, reticle.
Yes. The distinction between first focal plane and second focal plane is fundamental. In a traditional second focal plane optic, the reticle is physically etched onto the glass behind the magnification lenses.
Okay, so when you zoom in,
the target is larger, but the reticle remains the exact same physical size to your eye.
Which means any ballistic holdovers the hash marks used to compensate for bullet drop are only mathematically accurate at one specific magnification setting, usually the maximum zoom.
Exactly. If a soldier's engaging at 300 meters and dials the optic down to 3x magnification for a wider field of view, the hash marks no longer correlate to true bullet drop.
They'd have to perform complex mental math under fire just to figure out where to aim.
Right. But a first focal plane optic places the reticle in front of the magnification lenses. As the shooter zooms in, the reticle physically magnifies in perfect synchronization with the target.
So a hash mark that represents 10 inches at 100 yards will always represent 10 inches at 100 yards, regardless of the zoom level.
Exactly. It completely offloads the cognitive burden of calculating zoom ratio math.
That is incredibly smart. Removing that mental calculation under physiological stress must increase first-round hit probability drastically. But the SAI-6 is still a traditional optical instrument.
Right. Where the CMAR program truly crosses into science fiction is the integration of the General Dynamics sword system.
Okay, yes. The sniper, soldier weapon, and observer reconnaissance devices.
Sword represents a convergence of small arms and digital networking. General Dynamics is taking ruggedized Android smartphone technology and embedding it directly into the weapon system.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a little terrifying. We are turning a mechanical rifle into an Android device.
Yeah, it becomes a data node providing power, data sharing, and digital situational awareness right on the weapon.
But let me push back hard here. A rifle is designed to operate when submerged in mud or frozen at -40 degrees. What happens when your rifle needs a software update in the middle of a firefight? Or the battery dies?
The military community refers to this as fragility by complexity. The more sensors and software you add, the more vulnerable the system is to environmental or electronic degradation.
Right. If cold weather kills the screen responsiveness, the soldier is suddenly carrying dead weight.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, General Dynamics argues this is driven by the absolute necessity of keeping the soldier's head up.
What do you mean?
In modern combat, information overload is a fatal vulnerability. Traditionally, to get positional data or view a drone feed, a soldier has to physically look down at a chest-mounted tablet or a radio.
And the moment they look down, their situational awareness of their immediate physical environment drops to zero.
Exactly. Sword attempts to project that critical data directly into the weapon's optic, or a small weapon-mounted display.
So the map, the drone, feeds, friendly positions, it's all presented in their direct line of sight while the weapon is shouldered.
Right. And they've engineered safeguards against digital vulnerabilities. It features independent power architecture, but more importantly, inertial navigation capabilities.
Because in a peer-to-peer conflict, GPS signals will be jammed immediately, right?
Absolutely. Adversaries will jam or spoof satellite signals instantly. Inertial navigation solves this by using internal sensors, gyroscopes, and accelerometers to mathematically calculate the system's position based on its starting point.
It doesn't rely on external signals at all, so even if GPS is completely jammed, the weapon still tracks its location. That is wild.
It is. But while the digital integration is invisible to the naked eye, there is one piece of hardware that is jarringly obvious.
Oh, yeah. While the optics and smart tech are impressive, the most visually shocking piece of gear being tested on the CMAR is the suppressor.
Yes. The Strategic Sciences Multi Function Muzzle Device, the MFMD.
This is the most alien piece of technology on the whole gun. Developed partly by Millbrook Strategic Sciences in Canada, right?
Yes. It initially won a special operations contract in 2025 and is now seen on the new CMAR rifles. And the visual shock comes from its geometry.
Because it is not a cylinder. Traditional silencers are cylindrical because they are turned on lathes, right? A piece of metal spins, tools hollow it out, and symmetrical baffles are welded inside.
Exactly. The physics of lathe manufacturing mandate a cylindrical tube, but the MFMD abandoned subtractive manufacturing entirely. It is 3D printed, boxy, rectangular, and entirely asymmetrical.
Using direct metal laser sintering, I believe?
Yes. High-powered lasers fuse microscopic layers of titanium powder together, building the structure from the ground up. This allows engineers to design internal geometries, voids, intersecting chambers, complex flow paths that are physically impossible for a machine tool to cut.
So instead of the gas hitting simple walls and slowing down, the asymmetrical design forces the gas through an incredibly intricate labyrinthine path.
Right, it expands laterally and travels a much longer route, delaying the forward venting until well after the bullet has exited.
And it's modular. The base unit acts as a brake and a flash hider, but you can snap on secondary units like the SD or SDX for more expansion chambers.
It's undeniably advanced, but the public reaction exposed a massive disconnect between military realities and commercial expectations.
Oh man, the Reddit thread. We have to talk about the RNFA community reaction. A user with the colorful handle tactical horsecock posted a video of the MFMD, and the reactions were highly polarized.
The primary shock factor was the sticker shock. The commercial price is $4,300 for the module and up to $11,500 for a 50 caliber version.
Yeah, commenters were calling it fugly and pointing out visible flash in the burst. But the most intense argument was over the claim that it is hearing safe.
Right. A user named Baron von Mittersill aggressively challenged that claim, pointing out the fundamental physics of suppressed supersonic ammunition.
Because standard 5.56 NATO leaves the barrel at over 3,000 feet per second, it's highly supersonic.
Exactly. A suppressor only captures and cools the expanding gases at the muzzle. It mitigates the explosive report.
Hmm.
But if the bullet is traveling faster than the speed of sound, it generates a continuous sonic boom, a ballistic crack.
And that crack alone is loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage. So marketing a supersonic system as hearing safe well, it's physically inaccurate.
From an audiological standpoint, he is correct. But despite the internet's skepticism, this is military-grade disruptive technology.
Right. Reducing the actual muzzle blast below that 140 decibel mark fundamentally alters the acoustics of a firefight.
Exactly. Even if the supersonic crack remains, stripping away the concussive blast makes it incredibly difficult for an adversary to pinpoint the origin of the fire.
And reducing overpressure allows squad members to communicate verbally in enclosed spaces.
The high price tag proves it's designed for massive government contracts, not civilian hobbyists. It represents a paradigm shift, moving away from simple metal tubes to complex 3D printed geometric structures.
So I have to ask you, the listener, directly. What stands out to you? Is it the sheer innovation of a 3D printed maze for gunpowder gas? Or the fact that a single muzzle device costs more than my first car?
It's a lot to process.
It really is. We've traced the journey from an $81.8 billion macroeconomic strategy designed to break reliance on foreign supply chains,
Down to the domestic nitrocellulose required for the bullets.
to the Android network CMAR rifles shooting them and the boxy alien suppressors keeping them quiet.
It really shows that national sovereignty in 2026 is no longer just about having an army. It's about owning the intellectual property, controlling the critical minerals, and having the domestic facilities to build and maintain the hardware.
Because if you don't own the supply chain, your entire national defense is just a lease agreement with a foreign power. Which leaves us with a final lingering question for you to mull over. If our weapons are increasingly becoming highly networked nodes, integrated with smartphones and dependent on complex digital systems, will the future of global conflict be decided by the physical punch of a 5.56 caliber bullet, or by the cybersecurity protecting the soldier's operating system?
Scary thought.
When a rifle becomes a computer, does the battlefield just become another server room? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the fascinating hidden mechanics of the world around you.